Hello, I'm R.A. Spratt, and I want to welcome people joining us this week on the Yoto podcast platform. Now, just so you know, most of the bedtime stories I tell here are standalone stories. But over the last year, we have been dipping in and out of the epic story of Odysseus, the hero from ancient Greek mythology. And this week, I'm going to be telling the second last installment of that tale. So if you can jump in right here, that'll be fine. I'm sure you'll pick it all up. But if you did want to go back to the beginning and start from the first episode, you can search back through the episodes. The first episode's called Odysseus, as told by Nanny Piggins, and it dropped on January 8th, 2025. Or you can go back and listen to any of the other episodes. You're going to find fairy tales, myths, legends, and mysteries. I hope you enjoy them all. Now let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, R.A. Spratt. All right, well, this episode is going to drop late. It was supposed to drop at 6 a.m. this morning. It's currently 4:45 in the afternoon, and I haven't even, I'm starting to record it now, and then I've got to edit it, so I'll be very surprised if this is dropped much before 10 o'clock tonight. I apologize for that, but it's just that real life has run me over a bit this week. But what I've been doing is in your interests, because what I've been doing is I've been going up to Sydney and recording audiobooks because it occurred to me that over the Christmas break, when I'll probably be running some of the Christmas reruns, I love a Christmas rerun, some of you might be out there on road trips or holiday trips or just hanging around the house over the Christmas holidays, and you might like to listen to an audiobook. So I have been recording 2 audiobooks in the last week. I recorded Nanny Piggins 7, The Daring Rescue, which is partly set in Vanuatu, the last couple of chapters. And I've also recorded Friday Barnes 3. I was in the studio, today's Wednesday, so Monday, Tuesday this week, doing that. So, yeah, I was actually supposed to be in the studio today as well, but I'm not there because I've done so many audiobooks now and I do so much recording. I'm actually really quick and efficient at it, so I managed to get out a day early. So that's good news because now I can record the podcast. Otherwise, I was going to have to drop a rerun. Anyway, so those 2 things are happening. There's going to be a Nanny Piggins audiobook and a Friday Barnes audiobook come out in time for the Christmas holidays. So you've all got something to listen to as you travel around. So I hope you like that. I'll let you know closer to the time when it comes out. What else have I been doing? I've been super busy. It's ridiculous. I have finally started writing Friday Barnes 14, which is a miracle because it's due in about 6 weeks. Yeah, we'll see how we go. It'll get there. It might just be a little bit late. Don't tell my publisher. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. I'll be able to tell you about that as the months go on. Yeah, let's just get into it. It's been nice going up and down to City. Oh, I'll tell you what's going on. My daughter's doing the HSC and her first exam is tomorrow. That's the other reason this is a bit late, is because through my entire life, like my daughter is obviously she turns 18 on the weekend, I have prioritized my work a lot. And there just comes a point sometimes that as a mother, you have to not prioritize work and prioritize your children. And today was one of those days. So that's why it's nearly 5 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm recording this, is because she's got to start doing the HSC tomorrow, which, if you don't know, is the end of high school exams here in New South Wales. And she's stressed, so I had to spend the day with her. We went to Costco. That's our idea of fun, because it's like an hour drive. So we listen to music and we talk and go and have a slice of pizza at Costco and buy coffee and things like that and have all the free samples and then come home again. So that's what we did to help her relax on the day before her final exams. And that is partly why this podcast is going to drop probably about 18 hours later than it should have done. So anyway, that's an explanation of what's going on with my life. And part of the reason I didn't do a rerun this week is because I'm doing, as you know, if you've listened to the last couple of weeks, we're in the middle of doing the stories of Odysseus and the Odyssey, the journey back from the Trojan War. And over the last couple of weeks, we've had the story of like last week was the whirlpool and the 6-headed monster. And, I can't even remember what was the week before that. It's probably Hades and all that sort of thing. So it was kind of like on a cliffhanger. So I didn't want to I didn't want to drop everything and do a rerun this week because, the story continues on very close on the heels of last week. So it's going to be the third installment of this run of stories about Odysseus. And then we will take a break from Odysseus for a little while. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. We will then come back to Odysseus again later on because the end part of the Odysseus story is really cool because it is like bows and arrows and him pretending to be other people. And it's very exciting when he does finally return to Ithaca. So we will get to that, but we're just going to take a little break for a couple of weeks while I do some other stories. All right, that's enough explanation. Now let's get into today's story. The Legend of Odysseus and the Fatal Cows, as told by Nanny Piggins. Where did we leave off? Asked Nanny Piggins when the children arrived home from school. Well, Odysseus had just survived the whirlpool and the six-headed monster, but her men were really cross with her for not warning them, so they demanded to be allowed to rest on the island of the sun, said Derek. Yeah, and Odysseus warned them that they must never, ever eat one of the cows that lived on the island, added Samantha, because the blind prophet they'd met in Hades said that if they did, none of Odysseus's men would survive to return to Ithaca. Ah, yes, said Nanny Piggins. But they'd had quite enough of Odysseus's prophecies at that point, particularly her selective sharing of them, so they threatened to mutiny if they did not stop on the island. So Odysseus, probably feeling a little tired and emotional herself after all that yelling at her men to row and watching 6 of her men get eaten by a monster, gave in to their demands. Which seemed like a terrible idea at the time, but unhappy men are hard enough to deal with on dry land. I can only imagine they're even more tiresome on a ship on the open ocean, when you can't take a nice long walk and do deep breathing exercises to get away from them. So the ship pulled in at the island of the sun, Odysseus optimistically hoping that if they only stayed one night and got sailing again at dawn the next morning without eating any cows, then everything would be all right. But let me guess, said Michael, it didn't happen that way? No, agreed Nanny Piggins. Greek myths are never big on happy endings, happy beginnings, or even happy middles in their stories, and that is true here. As soon as they set foot on the island, it started to rain. Now you may think, what is a little rain to a group of soldiers who've survived the Trojan War, a series of hideous, brutal monsters, angry gods, and a deadly whirlpool? And that's true, it didn't seem like a big deal at first, except that the rain kept coming, and coming, and coming. And so did the wind. And it was a really strong wind, so strong it bent the trees, and Odysseus' men had to lean as they walked so they wouldn't be blown over. And this wind blew from the south, which meant that the following morning, when they all woke up, they couldn't set sail, because if they did, the mighty south wind would blow them straight back into the whirlpool and towards the 6-headed monster. So they had to stay on the island in the rain. At first, that wasn't too bad. At least they were safe. And they were on land, so they didn't have to do any rowing, and they did have a ship full of food that Circe had given them. But the wind kept blowing and the rain kept falling day after day after day, and the food started to run out. Odysseus got nervous, partly for herself, but mainly for the cows, because even in the rain and the wind, those cows looked delicious. You see, it was the island of the sun, and the cows belonged to the god of the sun, Helios. He was the one who drove the sun across the sky every day in his chariot, which sounds glamorous, but actually was quite a boring job, driving a chariot along the same route day after day after day. The one thing that brought him joy as he rode his chariot across the sky was looking down and watching his cows happily munching away on their grass. He really did love those cows. Why? Asked Michael. Did the cows have magic powers? Of course they did, said Nanny Piggins. All cows have magic powers. They do? Asked Derek. Yes, said Nanny Piggins. What sort of magic powers? Asked Samantha. Can they saw a lady in half? Or pull a rabbit out of a hat? You're thinking of magicians, said Nanny Piggins. Oh, no. The magic cows can do is much more impressive than anything a mere magician can do. A cow can take regular, boring, green grass, the type people watch growing when they're trying to be really bored, and they can transform that grass into cake. Really? Asked Samantha. Well, not exactly, said Nanny Piggins, but a cow can eat grass and through the miracle of digestion and lactation transform it into milk, which is then made into butter and cream, and then they are used to make cake. Now, grass is all very well. It's nice to run on. It hurts much less than gravel or concrete when you fall on it. Just ask the postman. He always prefers it if I crash tackle him on the nature strip if I think he has a parcel that may contain chocolate. But if you have ever eaten grass, perhaps because you accidentally got some in your mouth while crash-tackling the postman, it doesn't taste good at all. It tastes like lettuce, only worse, because at least people have the decency to put mayonnaise or salad dressing on lettuce. But if you slam face first into the nature strip, there is no mayonnaise there. And that's just the reality of grass. Whereas cake is the most joyful food substance known to man. But what about chocolate? Asked Michael. You always say chocolate is the most delicious food substance known to man. Yes, of course, said Nanny Piggins. Chocolate is wonderful, sublime, heavenly. But the difference with cake is every cake is wonderful, sublime and heavenly, plus it's a work of art. You see, chocolate is made in a factory by the greatest minds and the most extraordinary technicians in the world. But cake is made by mums and dads and grannies and canteen helpers and CWA ladies and church volunteers and bakers. Real people, many of whom have had no formal training, just natural ability driven by instinct. They take ingredients like chocolate, butter, flour and sugar and combine them using love and imagination and a healthy fear that their 5-year-old will throw a tantrum if they don't get it right. And in doing so, they create a culinary work of art that has meaning far beyond the food that it actually is. I've never thought about it that way, said Derek. No one ever does, said Nanny Piggins. If they did, more people would be stopping when they took country drives to thank cows for their service. Is that why cows are considered sacred in India? Asked Samantha. I don't know, said Nanny Piggins. Next time I meet an Indian cow, I shall ask. Anyway, where was I with the story? Odysseus' men had been sitting on the island in the rain for weeks and the food was running out, said Derek. Oh, yes, said Nanny Piggins. And eventually the food did run out. And there was no television on this island, no movie theatre and no laser tag. There was nothing to do except watch the cows. The big, beautiful, happy, delicious-looking cows roaming about the island eating grass. Now, Odysseus had been very clear since day one that they must not, under any circumstance, eat one of these cows. But the men were just men. They couldn't help themselves. They sat there in the rain and the wind, watching the cows and thinking of beef recipes. Beef Wellington, steak tartare, beef and black bean sauce, chili con carne, spaghetti bolognese, meat pie. It was all the men could think about. After a week of no food at all, Odysseus could see that the men could not last much longer. They would either starve to death or snap and eat the cows, or snap and eat her. She was a pig after all, and Eurylochus kept muttering about if he couldn't have a steak, then he would settle for a bacon sandwich. Odysseus had to do something, preferably something that got her away from her hungry-looking men. They started rubbing herbs on her and sprinkling salt on her where she wasn't looking. "Are you trying to flavour me?" Odysseus asked Polites when she noticed him smearing a rosemary and olive oil paste on her shoulder. "Oh, no, boss," said Polites. "Of course not. This is just a moisturiser for your skin. If it makes you taste good, should you happen to get roasted, that's just a coincidence." Then Eurylochus offered to give her a shoulder massage, which was very nice. Odysseus had been feeling rather tense, until she realised he had an ulterior motive. "Are you trying to tenderize me?" she demanded. "Oh, no, of course not," lied Eurylochus. "I just want to help you with your stress management. We don't want a tense a tense leader." Odysseus had to do something, so she decided to pray to the gods. But she decided to do it on the other side of the island in case the men tried roasting her while she had her eyes closed. So Odysseus staggered over to the far side of the island. She was starving herself, and it took all her energy to get there in the pouring rain and howling wind. On the far beach, she fell to her knees, closed her eyes, and prayed to the great god, mighty Zeus. "Zeus, I know you're busy ruling the heavens and the earth and chasing after nymphs, and I'm probably just one of the many mortal heroes you're torturing right now, but could you please, pretty please, stop the wind and the rain and just let us go home? We know we've been wicked, bad humans who've disappointed you with our bad behaviour on several occasions. I can't remember exactly when. We've annoyed so many gods in the last 10 years, it's hard to keep track. But please, just let me return to my beloved home of Ithaca. I left for the Trojan Wars 23 years ago, and the war only lasted 10 years, so I'm already 13 years overdue to return, so my husband is going to be really cross when I get home." Luckily, the gods were listening, and they heard Odysseus' plea. Athena went to Zeus to talk to him about it. Come on, Zeus. This is Odysseus. She is an epic hero. There are prophecies about her. You can't let her die slowly of starvation on a tiny island. There will be stories written about her for thousands of years to come. And that would be a really bad ending, which would totally ruin the book sales. All right, said Zeus. Very well. I suppose after so many years of torture, she has endured enough. I will stop the rain and wind and allow her to return to Ithaca. So, as Odysseus knelt there on the beach, the rain and the wind stopped. Odysseus was overwhelmed with relief, gratitude, and exhaustion. The sun shone down on her for the first time in over a month, and she collapsed right there on the beach in exhaustion, falling into a deep sleep. Oh, finally, said Samantha, something goes right. Yes, it would seem that way, said Nanny Piggins. Odysseus was so tired she slept for hours. She had the most lovely dream that she was at a sausage sizzle with hundreds of delicious beef sausages cooking away. The dream seemed so real she could actually smell it, the smell of delicious sizzling sausages over a fire. Then suddenly Odysseus was 100% awake. It wasn't a dream, it was a barbecue. A beef barbecue. If her nose was right, and she was a Piggins, so her nose was always right, her men were eating a cow. Odysseus raced back to the other side of the island, but it was too late. When she got there, her men had built a big fire, and they were roasting cuts of beef over the flames. What have you done? Cried Odysseus. Cooked lunch, said Eurylochus. Oh, we're doomed, wailed Odysseus. It's just one cow, said Polites. Yeah, said Eurylochus, there's no need to have a cow about it. The men sniggered. The gods are going to punish us, said Odysseus. This whole island is covered in cows, said Eurylochus. Who cares? Odysseus did not know what to say, but someone responded by saying, Moo. What was that? Asked Eurylochus. Moo, said the voice again. Sounded like a cow, said Polites. A very sad, angry cow. Moo, came the voice the third time. They looked about. There were no cows standing nearby. Moo! The voice wailed once more. Then the men realized that the mooing was coming from the cow that was roasting over the fire. Moo! You should not have eaten me. I am the cow of the sun god Helios. You shall be punished. Moo, said the cow again. This time, the voice was coming from the beef they all had in their hands. The men dropped the food. Quick, run for the boat, cried Odysseus. The men sprinted down the beach, pushed the ship out, and set sail as fast as they could, desperate to get away from the island and the haunted beefsteak. When they were out in the open ocean, a north wind filled their sails, and they breathed a sigh of relief. You see, said Eurylochus, the gods didn't even notice. We're going to get away with it. But of course, that was not true. Helios had noticed immediately and gone straight to Zeus to complain about it. They've eaten one of my cows, complained Helios. I know, said Zeus. You better do something about it, said Helios. Otherwise I am not going to take the sun across the sky. Fine, I'll handle it, said Zeus. Next thing, Poseidon turned up. He's on the sea again, said Poseidon excitedly. He'd been wanting to kill Odysseus ever since she'd stabbed Poseidon's son, the Cyclops, in the eye. The sea is my realm. Please let me kill Odysseus. Please, pretty please, begged Poseidon. I'm tempted to kill him myself, said Zeus. Being the king of the gods is exhausting. My doctors tell me I have to relax more. I don't need this kind of headache. Helios says he won't carry the sun across the sky if I don't do something, and we can't survive without the sun in the sky. Fake tan hasn't been invented yet. No, I promised I'd destroy this ship, and I will. Awesome, said Poseidon. Then you can do whatever you want, said Zeus. After that, I'm going to take a nap. So Zeus summoned up a mighty storm and sent it out across the ocean. Odysseus and her men nervously watched as the black, angry clouds rolled over them. I don't like this, said Polites. This feels very doomed-like, said Eurylochus. Then the storm erupted. Rain and hail teemed down. The ship was tossed and buffeted, and Zeus himself hurled a mighty thunderbolt down from the sky, and it smashed the mast clean off the boat, splintering wood everywhere, and all the men were tossed into the swirling sea. All of them, said Michael. Yes, said Nanny Piggins. Originally, Odysseus had left the Trojan War with 550 men. When she left the island of the sun, she was down to 44. And when Zeus hit her ship, all 44 of them were thrown overboard into the sea. Were they okay? Asked Samantha. Luckily, yes, said Nanny Piggins, because Odysseus, for all her faults, did have a very strict life jacket policy. No one was allowed on board unless they were wearing a life jacket. So we can presume that they all floated safely to a nearby island. But Odysseus never saw any of them ever again. She was alone on the mastless ship as it was ravaged by the storm. She tied herself to the stump of the mast, just as she had when they sailed past the sirens, so she would not be tossed overboard herself. But then Poseidon rose up from the ocean floor and sent the waves and the wind to punish her further. The ship was pushed further and further south until it wasn't just being pushed, it was also being pulled by the dreaded whirlpool. Odysseus realized she was being drawn back towards the six-headed monster again as well. But this time she was alone. There was no one to row. She was sure to die. The ship started to circle around the outer edge of the whirlpool, and as it was slowly drawn into the gurgling siphon of water, the ship was about to tip right over when Odysseus noticed a tree up overhead, growing in the side of the cliff face. She untied herself quickly, and as the ship passed under the tree, she jumped up and caught hold of the branches, just as the ship was sucked down into the depths of the terrible whirlpool. Above the roar of the spinning water, she could hear the crunch of wood as the shattering ship was broken into 1,000 pieces. And there was Odysseus, hanging in the tree in the pouring rain above the deadly whirlpool. She reached up her legs and clung on for as long as she could. But her arms and legs started to get tired. There was no way of climbing up the cliff face. She was surely doomed. But Goddess Athena took mercy on her. She sent a fog into the narrow strait. Poseidon had seen the ship be destroyed in the whirlpool and assumed that Odysseus was dead. So he went back home to the bottom of the sea, feeling very smug that he'd finally killed his human nemesis, and the storm eased. The tide was also turning, so the whirlpool began to slow and disappear, briefly before it started up in the opposite direction with the change of the tide. As the whirlpool eased, wrecked pieces of Odysseus' ship began to float back to the surface. Odysseus saw a broad beam that was painted blue. It was the stern of her ship, so she let go of the tree and fell into the water, then swam over and scrambled up on the piece of wreckage, and then collapsed unconscious with exhaustion. And as she slept, Athena sent gentle winds to push the wreckage to safety. You mean she pushed the wreckage all the way to Ithaca, so Odysseus was finally returned home to her family? Asked Samantha. Oh, no, said Nanny Piggins. The wreckage was washed ashore on a different island, the island of Calypso. What's Calypso? Asked Michael. Calypso isn't a what, said Nanny Piggins. It's a who. Calypso was a god who fell instantly in love with Odysseus. Oh, dear, said Derek. That never goes well. But Odysseus was married, said Samantha. Things like that never worry the gods, said Nanny Piggins. But we'll save the story of Calypso for another day. The end. Time for bed. All right. Well, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed that one. We're going to leave it there. And until next time, goodbye. Hello, it's me again. If you enjoyed listening to Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt, it would be really helpful if you could like, subscribe, follow, and or review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to now. Every little one of those digital affirmations helps, and the bigger this podcast gets, the more I can justify procrastinating from my real job to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you.